How do you envision the highly enriched uranium will be removed from Iran?
You go in and you take it out.
Tonight, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in his first U.S. broadcast interview since the war with Iran began. Netanyahu was careful, but he did signal where the war may be headed and the imperative of getting nuclear material out of Iran.
Can it be taken out by force?
Well, you're going to ask me these questions. I'm going to dodge them.
The once arcane process to redraw congressional district maps has exploded into an unprecedented national free-for-all to control Congress. But in the Deep South, we found the fight isn't just about red and blue, it's also about black and white.
The reality is, at the end of the day, it's going to dilute the black vote.
In the United States, we get equal rights. No one gets extra rights.
Really good start.
Remember the name, and how could you not? Gout Gout.
Go here, Gout Gout.
He is an 18-year-old phenom.
He is Gout of this world.
Kept on track by grandma guidance. His limber legs, her bad knees. Tonight, a surprise tale of old-fashioned values, in which taking it slow may result in a human running faster than ever.
Unbelievable.
You're okay being the bad cat?
Hell yeah, it doesn't bother me one bit.
I'm Leslie Stahl.
I'm Bill Whitaker.
I'm Anderson Cooper.
I'm Sharon Alfonsi.
I'm John Wertheim.
I'm Cecilia Vega.
I'm Scott Pelley. Those stories tonight on 60 Minutes.
The ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran was tested again today by suspected Iranian drone strikes in the Persian Gulf, another spurt of hostilities in a war that has now spread from the Gulf to Lebanon, further complicating White House efforts to close a deal that would reopen the Strait of Hormuz and stabilize energy prices. With so much at stake, and as the war stretches into its 11th week, our CBS News colleague Major Garrett spoke yesterday with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. This is Netanyahu's first U.S. broadcast interview since the war began. He was careful with his words, but if you listen closely, you can find signs of where the war and the region may be headed.
Is the war with Iran over? And if it isn't, who will decide when it is?
I think it accomplished a great deal, but it's not over because there's still nuclear material, enriched uranium that has to be taken out of Iran. There's still enrichment sites that have to be dismantled. There are still proxies that Iran supports. There are ballistic missiles that they still want to produce. Now, we've degraded a lot of it, but all of that is still there, and there's work to be done.
How do you envision the highly enriched uranium will be removed from Iran?
You go in and you take it out.
With what? Special forces from Israel? Special forces from the United States?
Well, I'm not going to talk about military means, but what President Trump has said to me, I want to go in there. And I think it can be done physically. That's not the problem. If you have an agreement and you go in and you take it out, why not? That's the best way.
What if there isn't an agreement? Can it be taken out by force?
Well, you're going to ask me these questions. I'm going to dodge them because I'm not going to talk about our military possibilities, plans, or anything of the kind.
And I'm just trying to get at how long is it going to take to achieve that aim?
I'm not going to give a timetable to it, but I'm going to say that's a terrifically important mission.
Hours before we sat down with the Prime Minister, Israel targeted Iranian-backed Hezbollah terrorists in Lebanon. This is the second front in the war with Iran, much more Israel's than America's.
Is it possible, Mr. Prime Minister, that the war with Iran could end, but the war with Hezbollah could continue? That these would be separate and divergent battlefields?
They should be. What Iran would like to do is to say, no, you know, if we achieve a ceasefire here, we want a ceasefire
there. They do, clearly.
You know why? Because they want Hezbollah to stay there and continue to torture Lebanon, continue to hold its people hostage, and continue
Will you accept that?
No. No, we've said...
Even if President Trump asks you to?
Well, look, he understands what I'm saying. I mean, we want to get rid of that danger to our communities, to our cities. They rocket our cities all the time. They rocket our communities. And of course, Would you want to live like that?
So this could go on,
Yeah, but
even
I
if
think,
Iran is solved.
I hope, no, if this regime is indeed weakened or possibly toppled, I think it's the end of Hezbollah, it's the end of Hamas, it's probably the end of the Houthis, because the whole scaffolding of the terrorist proxy network that Iran built collapses if the regime in Iran collapses.
Do you believe it is possible to topple the Iranian regime?
I think that you can't predict when that happened. Is it possible? Yes. Is it guaranteed? No.
But in the days before the war, according to a New York Times investigation, the prime minister presented a more optimistic case to the president.
And the New York Times reports as follows, quote, "In the Situation Room on February 11th, Mr. Netanyahu made a hard sell, suggesting that Iran was ripe for regime change and expressing the belief that a joint U.S.-Israeli mission could finally bring an end to the Islamic Republic." Is that correct?
No, that's actually incorrect, because...
In what ways is it incorrect?
It's incorrect in the sense that I said, oh, well, it's guaranteed, we can do it, and so on.
In the confines of that conversation,
Well,
you noted the uncertainty.
Not only did I note it, we both agreed, that there was both uncertainty and risk involved. And I remember that I said, and he said, that there's danger in action, in taking action, but there's greater danger in not taking action.
And continuing what the New York Times reported, quote, "Mr. Netanyahu and his team outlined conditions they portrayed as pointing to certain victory, adding the regime would be so weakened that it could not choke off the Strait of Hormuz." Is that factually incorrect?
I don't think we could quantify it exactly, but I think that the problem of the Hormuz Straits was understood as the fighting went on. I think that's...
It became understood.
It became understood.
Was it misread at the beginning?
I'm not sure it was misread, but there's a great risk for Iran to do it. And it took a while for them to understand how big that risk is, which they understand now. No, I don't claim perfect foresight, and nobody had perfect foresight. Neither did the Iranians.
Also not foreseen, the degree of Iranian military retribution against neighboring Gulf states and the damage it has caused. The Prime Minister told us we'd be surprised how many Arab states are interested in strengthening ties with Israel.
I now see the possibility of the expansion and the deepening of the agreements we do have to alliances with Arab states of the kind that we never even dreamed of.
There is concern rising among the Gulf monarchies that it will not allow and does not want Israel to exercise strategic dominance over the Middle East. So has any of this been jeopardized?
I'm hearing different things. I'm hearing the fact from Arab countries, which I won't get into.
All of them?
No. But some of them, and I never heard that before, let's strengthen our alliance with Israel, because that, in fact, deters Iran. Let's strengthen our alliance with Israel because we can do amazing things with Israel.
That was clearly the trajectory before this conflict.
It's more than you think now in ways that I guess will become public. I can't give everything to 60 Minutes or to you in one shot, but I'm telling you that the degree of economic cooperation on energy, on AI, on quantum, the areas where Israel is so strong, and they see the possibility now of sharing the fruits of these capabilities with them. And that's happening right now.
Also happening now, or later this week, a summit between Chinese President Xi Jinping and President Trump. China is the world's largest importer of crude oil through the Strait of Hormuz. We were curious about China's military involvement with Iran.
I'd like to ask you about what you know about China providing materially valuable military support to what remains of the Iranian regime. True?
China gave a certain amount of support on particular components of missile manufacturing, but I can't say more than that.
Does that disturb you?
Well, I didn't like it.
Because it's apparently doing it right now.
Could be. I don't want to speak for China. I don't want to speak also.
But you have eyes and ears on this.
Yeah, well, but I also have a closed mouth when necessary.
American military aid to Israel has enjoyed bipartisan consensus for decades. It is now $3.8 billion per year and subject to new political scrutiny because of shifting public attitudes about Israel and foreign aid in general.
Do you believe it's time for the state of Israel to re-examine and possibly reset its financial relationship to the United States, meaning what the United States provides to Israel on an annual basis?
Absolutely. And I've said this to President Trump. I've said it to our own people. Their jaws dropped. But I said, look.
Well, what do you mean? What are you saying?
I want to draw down to zero the American financial support, the financial component of the military cooperation that we have, because we receive $3.8 billion a year. And I think that it's time that we weaned ourselves from the remaining military support.
Can you give me a timetable?
I said, let's start now and do it over the next decade, over the next 10 years, but I want to start now. I don't want to wait for the next Congress. I want to start now.
Well-versed in American politics, the Prime Minister is keenly aware of declining support for Israel. According to a recent Pew survey, 60% of U.S. adults reported having an unfavorable view of Israel, up nearly 20 points in 4 years. One of the big reasons? The war in Gaza, where according to the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry, more than 70,000 people have been killed. That includes civilians as well as Hamas terrorists. Netanyahu attributes the reputational harm to Israel almost entirely to social media, which he calls the eighth front of the war.
Because it's this is yours, right? Mm-hmm. You're not immune either. Because you can penetrate this machine, you can penetrate this little instrument, and you can say about Major Garrett anything you want, and I can paint you as a monster. And if I say it often enough, enough people will believe it.
Do you believe Israel is at risk of losing this war on that social media front? And this is particularly, I believe, important in America for younger Americans, Republican and Democrat, scrolling through images, and they would use words like barbaric in Gaza and in Lebanon.
Israel has gone to unbelievable lengths to get innocent civilians out of harm's way. We text message millions of text messages to them, make millions of phone calls to them, pamphlets, leaflets, you name it, okay? We have seen the deterioration of the support for Israel in the United States almost, I would say it correlates almost 100% with the geometric rise of social media. And that by itself is not what caused it. And I don't believe in censoring them or anything, but I'll tell you what happened. We have several countries that basically manipulated social media, and they do it in a clever way. And that's something that has hurt us badly.
Is it your belief, Mr. Prime Minister, that nothing that Israel has done, tactically or strategically, has made no mistakes, either in Gaza or the West Bank, that have, in their own way, contributed to this negative impression of Israel, whether it's on social media or someplace else?
No, of course. Look, it's war. And in war, armies sometimes miss, and civilians die. And these are mistakes. These are not deliberate things that happen. Israel is besieged on the media front, on the propaganda front, and we've not done well on the propaganda war.
The International Criminal Court, which neither Israel nor the U.S. recognize, has accused the Prime Minister of war crimes for Israel's conduct in Gaza, where he says he has not yet achieved one of his most important goals, disarming Hamas.
Now what?
Somebody has to disarm them. And somebody has to then demilitarize Gaza. I would say disarm, demilitarize, de-radicalize, because you don't want these fanatics there.
Is that Israel's obligation, or is that the international community's obligation through the Board of Peace? And some
Major, find me the countries who would do it. You know, if it comes down to us, then we'll have to do it. But we'll choose the time and the circumstances in which to do it, because, you know, we've got a few other things. But we are not going to let Hamas ever threaten Israel again. It'll have to be done. Could be done the hard way. Could be done the easy way. I always prefer the easy way because unlike my caricature image, having been to war, having seen the tragedy of war, having experienced it in my own family, you don't readily dispatch people, young men and sometimes young women, into the battlefield.
You know, though, Mr. Prime Minister, there is an impression about you that it is a hunger that people perceive in you for conflict.
That's funny, you know, because for years, I was considered, right before the October 7th, I was considered perhaps the most restrained prime minister in Israel's history. I was conceived as being, politically tough, but militarily very restrained. Obviously, it changed on October 7th because they were going to annihilate us. I didn't think it was just an attack by Hamas. I saw it as it was, an attack by the Iran Axis to try to annihilate us through a noose of death. And I said on the second day of the war, I said, we're going to change the Middle East. We're going to change this condition where they're ganging up on us, thinking they're going to wipe out the one and only Jewish state, wipe out 3,500 years of Jewish history. It's not going to happen. Not on my watch. And I said to the Israeli citizens, not on your watch.
This past week, chaos and protests broke out in state houses as Republicans and Democrats raced to draw new congressional maps. What is usually an arcane process has become an unprecedented political free-for-all. At stake is control of Congress in November's midterm elections. With a razor-thin margin, both parties are rushing to draw new lines, hoping to tilt the House of Representatives in their favor. Adding fuel to the fire, a landmark Supreme Court decision 11 days ago found a congressional map in Louisiana was unconstitutional. The court said legislators relied too heavily on race to draw the lines. And that's where we went. Louisiana's Republican governor and his party are already moving to carve out new districts, and many black voters we met fear their district will be wiped off the map.
I just don't understand why there is nobody able to stop this train. You see all the wrong. Yeah. You see it's racist. You know it.
This past Monday, it was a packed house at the Galilee Baptist Church.
There is a fight for freedom.
The spiritual anchor to the west side of Shreveport, where for many the memories of Jim Crow run deep. One by one, the constituents lined up with questions about the fate of their congressional district. Their Democratic Congressman Cleo Fields didn't have many answers.
Sometimes you get a setback to be set up. I mean, don't underestimate that power of the vote. That's what they are trying to take away.
Right.
Congressman Fields has served the people of Louisiana for most of his life. First elected to the House of Representatives in 1992, he lost, then won again in never-ending redistricting battles. Now he could be facing another loss. You believe this will not be your seat when and if this map is redrawn?
I think it's highly unlikely.
You have said this is not about you, your job, the seat that you hold personally.
I'm just occupying the seat. And that's one of the things people get confused with. When there's a voting rights seat created, it guarantees a black an election. No, it doesn't guarantee a black anything. It just gives a black an opportunity to win an election. And that's why they even passed the Voting Rights Act.
The 1965 Voting Rights Act was created to protect minority voting power. In Louisiana, which has one of the highest percentages of black residents in the country, about 30%, there has never been a black politician elected to Congress in a district where whites are in the majority. The recent Supreme Court ruling virtually gutted the landmark legislation, but some say its time has passed. There are conservative African Americans who've spoken out in recent days, and they have praised this court's ruling. And they say that there's proof of real racial progress.
Oh, there is progress in the nation, but there is not progress in the southern part of our country to the extent that you should do away with the Voting Rights Act. You tell those same folk to come here and run for office and get elected.
The 6th District stretches more than 200 miles from Baton Rouge to Shreveport. During oral arguments, Chief Justice John Roberts called it, quote, a snake that runs from one side of the state, angling up to the other, picking up black populations as it goes along. The case was brought by a group describing themselves as non-African American voters. They sued Louisiana under the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, which says the government must treat everyone equally under the law. In its ruling, the court called the 6th District map an unconstitutional racial gerrymander. Named after founding father Elbridge Gerry, gerrymandering is the process of redrawing political voting lines to benefit the party in power, and it's perfectly legal. Elbridge Gerry created a district resembling a salamander, thus gerrymander. A snake in Louisiana was a lobster in Virginia and earmuffs in Illinois.
Yeah, it absolutely looks like a snake.
Congressman Cleo Fields acknowledges black representation in Washington has grown in ways that once seemed impossible. This Congress has more black members than at any point in history, 63. Is that not progress?
Yeah, it's progress, but it's not progress for Louisiana. There are people who, in this state and others, just will not vote for a black person for anything. You tell me I have to jump a certain height. That's the rule. I can work to do that. Run a certain speed. If that's the rule, let me work at it. I can do that. But if you tell me in order to be elected to Congress, you have to be white, there's nothing I can do about that. I need help from my government.
In the United States, we get equal rights. No one gets extra rights.
This past Tuesday, we went to Baton Rouge and met Governor Jeff Landry at the governor's mansion. A close ally of President Trump, he dominates Louisiana politics. The colorful, conservative Cajun was the state's attorney general before winning the top job in 2023.
You cannot say that we are all created equal and that states must treat everyone equal under the law and then allow a law to sort people based upon race.
Following the Supreme Court decision, Governor Landry declared a state of emergency and abruptly suspended congressional House primaries right as voting was starting, ordering a do-over at a future date, leaving voters dazed and confused. You declared a state of emergency. What exactly is the emergency?
We've got the highest court of the land says the map that you have is unconstitutional, so we don't have a map under which our voters can vote on.
This country has held elections during the Civil War, during 2 world wars. Elections still went on.
We're going to have an election, and we're actually going to have an election on Election Day.
But voting was already happening. As we sit here right now, more than 45,000 ballots have been returned. What happens to those?
Oh, those ballots are discarded, and those voters will vote again in November.
You say that like it's not a big deal.
Well, it's not a big deal. It's not my fault. If anybody has a grievance, take it to the United States Supreme Court.
Legal challenges over redistricting have consumed Louisiana, with federal courts repeatedly forcing lawmakers to redraw maps.
Our voters are tired of it. I mean, does not Louisiana deserve some clarity?
How do you want to see this look?
I want Louisiana to be finally unshackled from the decades of litigation.
Would it concern you if there were no African American representatives from Louisiana in Congress?
That's a decision that the legislature is going to make. But I don't believe that that we have to go and draw a district that guarantees us a minority representation.
Redistricting usually happens at the beginning of each decade using census data. But last summer, President Trump pushed Texas Republicans to redraw maps in hopes of gaining 5 seats ahead of the midterms. California's Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom responded by pushing a redistricting plan of his own that could give Democrats in his state 5 additional blue seats. Even former President Obama, who has publicly opposed gerrymandering in the past, is now pushing Democrats to fight back and pick up as many congressional seats as they can. The political tit-for-tat has turned into a coast-to-coast gerrymandering arms race, and Republicans are feeling increasingly confident following court rulings in their favor in Louisiana and Virginia. This past week, their efforts to redraw maps led to protests at the State House in Tennessee and Alabama.
Whoever draws the maps now has no legal requirement that the map be drawn in any way to protect the political power of minority groups.
Stephen Vladeck, a Georgetown law professor who studies the Supreme Court, predicts gerrymandering will lead to an even more polarized Congress dominated by lawmakers representing the extremes of both parties.
Instead of, once every 10 years per the Constitution, states saying, oh, we got to redraw our maps because we have more data about who our people are. Now it's let's redraw our maps whenever it's to our partisan political advantage to do so.
Is the biggest difference now President Trump's in office?
Oh, no. In fact, to me, the president he's irrelevant in this issue right now.
He's been heaping praise on you for this.
Well, I'm sure that the president would like to see the House of Representatives stay in Republican control.
I do have to ask you point blank, has the president asked you to redraw maps in order to help him in the midterms?
The president has not asked me to redraw the maps.
That job falls to the Republican supermajority in Louisiana's state legislature, which is already hard at work redrawing the maps, capitalizing on the Supreme Court's ruling. Justice Alito suggested, in his opinion, that there's less institutional racism today.
Well, I would agree with that. I mean, think about it. Barack Obama was elected twice as the United States president. We've had a number of minorities elected. We've seen a rise of Republican candidates who are black get elected. I mean, are we really trying to drug up the past only to continue a failed narrative?
What's the failed narrative?
Well, the failed narrative is that that people in Louisiana are racist, that basically we won't elect black people. I mean, I disagree with that.
But no black candidate in Louisiana has been elected to a statewide office such as governor or attorney general since Reconstruction. For many, Governor Landry's words fall flat. Pastor Timothy Hunter, Linda Scott, and Donnie Sutton have spent their lives in Shreveport and fear the future could soon resemble the past.
The reality is, at the end of the day, it's going to dilute the black vote. That's the whole purpose. This Republican Congress is all about making America Jim Crow again. There's no more check and balances. Everything that was there to guard against this type of gerrymandering is destroyed. So there's nobody to stop the train.
Can you separate politics from race in this district?
No, you can't. Not in all of these southern states.
We've come a long ways, but not with this when it comes to race, and not with the schemes that they're putting up before us. It's just a disgrace. But we must keep pressing forward. We have to. Too many people have suffered and died for us to have these rights.
I think a lot of African-American voters in this state might say they need that protection when it comes to the ballot box.
I mean, we go back to Martin Luther King, right? Judge a person based upon the content of their character rather than the color of their skin.
Black voters in Louisiana have told me that they feel like it's true. Someone who looks like you, who has not lived their experience, does not address their concerns as well as someone who has lived their experience.
Well, how is it that a little country boy who grew up in a town that was primarily black, not lived through those experiences?
But I do think a lot of folks might say those experiences are not necessarily the same.
Well, you're saying I should not judge a person just because the person is black, and I agree with that. But isn't it the opposite, that I shouldn't be judged just because I'm white or Hispanic or Indian? I mean, here we are, after all of the different cases, after all of the rectification of the sins of the past, which certainly no one has denied, And yet we're still trying to find some sliver of discrimination in race.
I think a lot of people would say you don't have to try to find it, it's there.
I would say that you find that it would reside in people's hearts, not in their laws.
There may be no sport older than sprinting, and still there's something singularly intoxicating about speed, about watching the fastest humans on the planet make like Usain Bolt and thunder down the straightaway. All the more so when they've navigated a circuitous path to get there. So remember the name, and how could you not, Gout Gout. He's an 18-year-old Australian. When he's not watching his beloved anime or taking photos on his Kodak camera, he's running, and inevitably winning, races in roughly the time it takes to spit out this sentence. When the 2028 Olympics arrive in Los Angeles in barely 2 years' time, Gout Gout could bolt to a medal. Fix your eyes on lane 6, the runner in the maroon shirt.
A really good start there.
16 months ago, in the equivalent of the Australian High School Championships, Gout Gout, then an 11th grader, did this.
And now we really start to open him up. So let the legs loose and let the kid run.
One imagines a car versus a fleet of bikes. Legs pumping like supercharged pistons.
He is Gout of this world. That is not human.
Gout turned in a time of 20.04 seconds in the 200-meter dash, clocking the fastest time in Australian history.
This may be the fastest we've ever seen.
Breaking a mark set by another runner at, get this, the 1968 Olympics.
These are adults records. Yeah, these are adult times, and me, just a kid.
Gout's time in the 200 also broke the world age group record set in 2003 by Usain Bolt, the Jamaican 8-time gold medalist considered the sport's greatest ever.
This race, you basically became the fastest 16-year-old in history.
My first couple of steps, I had a good start, and if I have a good start, it's kind of over because my top-end speed is great, and once I get in the top-end speed, I'm flying.
What is running nourishing in you?
Running just feeds that, I guess, inner child in me that wants to, kind of feel free. Like, running makes me feel like myself, for sure.
This is what you were meant to do.
Yeah, this is what I was pretty much put on this earth to do, and that's what I'm doing.
It's made him an overnight sensation. He keeps getting faster, and on his current trajectory of speed, he could be a force at the LA Olympics in 2028. 4 years after that, the ultimate home game.
We're in Brisbane, this is home, place I grew up.
Brisbane, the only home Gout's known, hosts the 2032 Summer Games. Gout will be 24 then, the age when sprinters tend really to hit their stride.
So let's watch the young superstar rise. He's flying. He will be Gout of this universe.
The reaction was warranted.
Unbelievable.
He didn't just win this race, the time qualified him for the World Championships.
For Gout Gout, a huge run now, the new personal best.
And if you worry all the hype is enough to inflate the ego of a teenager, don't. Note the woman in the visor. This grouchy grandma about to break up all the fun? That's Di Shepard, Gout's coach, the only one he's ever had.
Do we need to chase the attention? I don't like the attention. It's not my cup of tea. Gout handles it totally different to me, but good cop, bad cop.
You're okay being the bad cat?
Hell yeah, it doesn't bother me one bit.
Hey, mate.
Ask Gout. When he acts his age and, as we saw, goofs off at practice, his coach isn't having it.
Any excuse.
For real, if I did a curveball and the wind took it,
Mate, you're lucky you can run.
This is a story of next big thing energy.
Swimming.
Of his limber legs and her bad knees.
All right, guys, let's go.
It's also a throwback story, a tale of old-fashioned values and virtues, not least loyalty and patience.
Set.
Pretty good start.
There's no such thing as perfect start.
Right.
For us, it's all about the learning curve.
We begin in 2005, when Gout's parents emigrated from South Sudan to Brisbane, Australia's third largest city. Their second son of 7 kids, Gout, was born in 2007, his double name in keeping with Sudanese tradition.
Make sure you're driving back.
Yeah.
You want to try and get that negative foot contact.
When Gout was the equivalent of a 7th grader at Ipswich Grammar, Shepard, then as now the school's track coach, spotted him racing classmates.
You get to here and all of a sudden it's just like...
Yeah.
You're running around with your friends, and this woman says, "Hey, come here."
Yeah. Because previous to that, like, people would be like scared of her because, you know, she's cranky, people say. So like me being a kid, a 12-year-old, 13-year-old kid, I'm like, am I getting in trouble? Like, what's going on? And then she calls me over and she's like, you should come to track and field training.
I'm guessing you won that sprint across the field that day.
Of course.
They were showing me a particular boy and Gout was running against this particular boy and I'm just going, no, who's the other kid? Who's that? I want him.
What did you see?
I looked at him and just went, oh my God. Something just gut punch. It was just like, this kid's a real deal.
You saw greatness from...
Yep. From that day I saw him. So I was just talking to the junior school headmaster and I'd said to him that, watch me, I'm going to make that one a champion. He thought I was mucking around.
She never mucks around. She has no formal track background, but her son was a fast kid with big ambitions, and in the early 2000s, when he was a student at Ipswich Grammar, she inquired as to how to become a track coach at the school. She was told that only school employees could coach. Fine. She quit her job at a supermarket and took a job handing out school uniforms so she'd be eligible. Soon after starting to train with Coach Dye, Gout was winning and winning.
Ipswich Grammar School.
There were medals, trophies, and in time an agent. Then something funny happened.
34 stones, you know what I mean?
Or didn't happen. For all the attention and opportunities, Gout stayed in school, where in December he graduated with straight A's. And he stayed with Coach Dye.
It's a pretty crazy dynamic when you think about it. The old white lady and a young black kid, you know, is a crazy dynamic, but turns out it works perfectly and wouldn't have it any other way, yeah.
You appreciate there's something almost like a movie, like cinematic
it's
about
straight out of a movie.
But it works.
Yeah, indeed, it does work. And I guess our personalities kind of filter off each other, like, all on the same level, and we're all learning. So it's a great relationship.
You want to let the weight come up itself.
If the coaching relationship is singular, well, so is everything about Gout. Yes, there are the inevitable comparisons to Bolt, who recently said of Gout, he looks like young me. But in truth, Gout recalls few other sprinters. For one, there's his unique physique, more befitting a runner of longer distances. Gout is 6 feet tall, less than 150 pounds, all tendons, bones, and ropey muscles. By comparison, Bolt ran at 6'5", 207 pounds. Where Bolt exploded from the start, Gout can struggle off the blocks. It's the mid-race speed endurance.
Faster hands, let's see it, all of you.
His ability to sustain top speed of roughly 25 miles an hour that makes him extraordinary. But he's still an unfinished product, and Shepard says failing to account for that can bring about injury and burnout.
If I tried to make him super quick now, I'd break him.
You can't have a sprinter's approach to sprinting.
Just the fact he's a kid. And he's got so much more physical development. Like, he only really hit puberty in the last 12 to 18 months, basically.
Really?
Yep. I had to deal with a lot of growth issues with Gout. When I met Gout, he walked right up on his toes. Took me 6 months to get the heel down. And it wasn't all the way down. He still walked. That's why he looks like he kind of...
He's got these springs in his legs now.
Dylan Hicks is an expert in sports biomechanics and a movement scientist at Flinders University in Adelaide. He recently published an academic paper on sprinting based on his country's new star.
Everybody has springs in their legs because we've got these things called Achilles tendons. But when we have them at a longer length, Achilles tendons are really powerful at storing elastic energy. So we see him sort of bouncing his way down the track and using less steps than everybody else.
Predictably, brands have come calling. An Adidas deal reportedly pays Gout a base of more than $4 million over 8 years.
Were you worried when the Adidas money came? That was going to change the dynamic and the balance?
I think the only time we'll have trouble is if it's a girl that I don't like.
He brings home a girlfriend that doesn't meet Coach Dye's approval. What happens?
I'd go to Mum and go, yeah, she's got to go.
By the way, if you're looking for classic hovering sports parents, well, wrong family. Busy raising their other kids and working, Dad runs a dishwashing operation at the local hospital, Mom works inside the home. Gout's parents politely decline all interview requests, ours included. In effect, they've deputized Coach Dye to help oversee their son's ascending career. The only way she rolls, anyway.
I'm guessing you and helicopter parents
No.
don't get on too well.
Not at all.
You're upfront about this.
Yep.
I'm going to be the coach, and if you want to hover and you want to
Yep.
share in the glory, I'm probably not the coach for you.
Yep.
Last summer, we visited Gout and Coach Dye in Germany, where they held a training base in Tübingen, a sleepy college town, all uneven streets and smooth tracks.
I feel bad if we don't want to turn an ankle on cobblestone.
Indeed.
They were fresh off Gout's international pro debut.
His first race as a pro in Europe, this from Gout Gout. A battle between these two, and Gout working so hard to get to him, and he gets there. Gout takes it by a meter.
At the big meet in Ostrava in the Czech Republic, he took first in the 200, shaving time off his personal best.
I'm big on stepping stones. I'm big on, okay, well, we've got to enjoy that, but it's a step. You're not there yet.
We're not doing victory laps for what you did when you were 17 years old.
How many people run 20.04? Men. Not a boy, but men. So, yeah, you're there, but then he's got to take the next leap.
Last fall at 17, the youngest 200-meter sprinter at the Track World Championships, Gout carried great expectations into Tokyo, having garnered attention that's hard to come by in the sport outside of the Olympics. He placed fourth in his semifinal heat, an indication there are still levels to go. But then, just last month, the next leap.
Gout's in front, he's coming away now.
At a race in Sydney, Gout became the fastest teenager in the history of the world in the 200.
Oh, incredible.
Running a 19.67, a time that would have won him bronze at the 2024 Olympics. Still, he's not getting ahead of himself.
It strikes me you're sprinting, but pacing your life is really important.
Yeah, like it's crazy to think about how you want to run as fast as possible, but you don't want to overload too much when you're a teenager, because then that messes up the rest of your career. Like, you know, you got all the time in the world.
What do the next few years look like? In February, we watched him work out with local kids. Not exactly a world-class stable. But Gout and his unlikely coach believe that right now this is the best environment as he works toward future Olympics. He is a big enough deal here that he's received perhaps the highest Australian honor, a signature line of that delicacy, Vegemite. Imagine Nutella if chocolate were brown yeast.
Very on brand for an up-and-coming Aussie athlete.
Yeah.
But stardom, he says, is no goal.
You're okay with fame?
Me personally, I didn't call it fame. I like to call it well-known in the wider community.
Well-known in the wider community.
That's right. So I don't really use the word famous, but, you know, just well-known.
You're doing okay with being well-known in the wider community?
I'm doing all right, yeah.
See how Usain Bolt and Gout Gout stack up against each other in the 200.
Easy to see how he might break that Usain Bolt record
At 60minutesovertime.com.
I'm Scott Pelley. We'll be back next week with another edition of 60 Minutes.